Good afternoon, everyone. We want to welcome you to the second in our Mental Health Matters webinar series. And I am Kim McNulty, Vice President of Regional Strategy for One Future Coachella Valley, and we are thrilled that you are joining us today. This afternoon, we're going to be talking a little bit about exploring careers in mental and behavioral health, and we have some fabulous panelists here to share a little bit about who they are and what they do and opportunities for you should you want to pursue a career in behavioral health. And so again, we're excited to have you here. We'll have some interactive activities, some poll questions throughout, and at the end, we're going to do a drawing for a gift card. So excited that you're here. And with that, I'll go ahead and get started. I wanted to share a little bit about what One Future Coachella Valley is. And we are a regional nonprofit in the Coachella Valley that is dedicated to making sure that all of our students graduate ready for what comes next, college, career, and life, and that we have, that students have the tools and the resources that they need to be successful. We're about making sure that our students are able to pursue the education paths and get the degrees and certificates and credentials that they want, that will allow them to have a great career and allow them to come back to the Coachella Valley and be part of our economy. And as part of this work, we've got a focus on behavioral health workforce development, which I talked about. And the team that has put together this webinar series is our regional behavioral health workforce alignment team. And the mission of this team is to encourage local students to consider careers in behavioral health and to support them along that career path, so that we have a next generation behavioral health workforce in the Coachella Valley that is students from our own community who understand what this community is about and the needs of our community, and who have developed the skills to be able to serve with behavioral health. So we have a team of about 90 professionals and educators who are dedicated to this purpose. And so today's program is brought to you through our behavioral health workforce alignment team. And we've got a great team on my side that is helping us put this together. Eloisa Lopez is a One Future staff person who helps coordinate our behavioral health alignment team. Eloisa, do you want to say hello?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
And then also Ariana Arias, who is also helping us with this webinar series. So welcome, Ariana.
Hello, thank you.
And we've got just a few guidelines for today's program. We ask that everyone just be courteous in your comments. We'll invite you to share comments in the Q&A part of the webinar. And just please have respect for people's questions or comments in the chat or the Q&A. And our intention is that this is a friendly learning environment. And as I'm sure all of you have experienced over the last several weeks and a couple months, we're all learning new skills when it comes to digital learning and Zoom technology. So if we should have any technical difficulties, please bear with us and know that we're all in this together. And we, last of all, want to encourage everybody to ask questions. We have a great, as I said, panelist professionals with a wealth of experience who've volunteered their time to be with us today, and it's all to provide you with access to information and to be able to meet these folks. So please don't be shy. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ariana, and she's going to start us off with a question.
All right, thank you, Kim. So now we're going to start off with a question for you guys. And if you guys could please put in the chat, and can you answer this question, which is, why are you interested in a mental health career? So we'd like to know why you guys are interested in it. So if you can let us know in the chat, it'd really help us to know why you guys are interested in it. So I'll give you around a minute to answer that. And don't worry, this is, whatever you put will only be available for us to see. So the other attendees won't be able to see them.
Great. So we've got Kayla wants to help as many people as she can and to normalize receiving mental health care. Awesome.
All right, about 30 seconds left. Very interesting responses. I like how everyone's really interested in bringing awareness and trying to help people. So that's a great reason to join this field.
Absolutely interested because you want to help others. You have empathy. Empathy is a huge skill, I think, and our panelists can attest to that. And helping to provide supports and overcome issues. So thank you guys very, very, very much. Excellent. So right now then, thank you for your participating. You're doing that part very well, and we want to encourage you to continue to do that throughout the webinar today. So without further ado, I want to introduce all of you to the panelists that we have today. And we have prepared some questions that we'll be asking them. And as we shared, if you have any questions you would like to ask the panelists, please post them in the Q&A section and we will make sure that we get there. So first of all, I want to introduce Nina Redes. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist. And she's also a behavioral scientist, and she's a faculty member at UCR School of Medicine. So welcome, Nina. Also Jim Grisham, who is a nurse and a licensed marriage and family therapist. And Jim is a mental health administrator with Riverside University Health System's Behavioral Health, and they are the county's mental health services provider. And then we also have Paulina Ospina, who is a clinical social work and therapist. And so we're thrilled to have all of you here. Thank you very much for joining us. And I'll turn it over to Eloisa and our panelists.
Thank you for the introduction, Kim. And so we're gonna go ahead and get started to the panel questions. They will each answer these questions, and then as Kim mentioned, at the end, we will open it up for questions that you all might have. So the first question for our panelists is, we want to learn a little bit more about yourselves. So can you share a little bit about what you currently do and the path that you took to your career? We'll get started with Nina.
Hi, everyone. So thank you for the introduction and thank you for having me. So depends on the time of the year, I have 2 to 3 jobs. I have a private practice. I also am the behavioral scientist at UCR School of Medicine. I have taught at UC Riverside as well in their undergrad division, but I'm actually teaching at Brandman University in their grad school. So enjoying that, keeping really busy. I knew I always wanted to go into psychotherapy, so I started at community college, transferred over to UC San Diego, and then I got my master's at San Diego State University. And so somehow I found myself in the desert. So, but I love it here.
Thank you for sharing, Nina. Paulina?
Hello, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. I also, like Nina, I always knew I wanted to be a psychologist, but I'm from Colombia, so that's the one name. And my path was to do a bachelor's in psychology. Then I did a master's in social work and a master's in public health. Then I went around and did some policy work at the project level for a few years, working gender issues and projects, and then came back to counseling because I like doing work one-on-one, because you can do deeper work and mentor people in a closer way. So that's how I do. And I have a private practice in the desert. I've had it now for 7 or 8 years. Before that, I worked for nonprofits in the desert, provided mental health. And before that, I lived in Bogota, Colombia, and I had a practice there.
Nice. Jim, would you like to share?
Sure. I was a medic and a psych tech in the Army. I didn't have a lot of money coming out of high school. And so I joined the military just to get some experience. And then I worked as a psych tech. I came back from the Army and went to nursing school at Loma Linda, and then worked in inpatient psychiatric units with kids and youth and some with adults, and through marriage and family therapy school. So my career has always been a little bit inpatient, and then I came to the county. I've been with the county about going on 20 years. I've done outpatient psych as a nurse and a therapist, became a clinic supervisor, and then became a county administrator about 7 years ago. And I've done administrative work with children's programs and with adult programs and with older adult programs. And with a county system, you just go where they tell you, kind of. And that's an important point within a county. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So you've all had very interesting career paths, and sometimes in these paths there's some challenges that we can encounter. So can you talk about one of the biggest challenges you faced in your career path and then also in your current profession? We can get started with Nina.
I think one of the biggest challenges I've encountered is I'm learning to prioritize my happiness. So it's about definitely, improving my resume and getting all sorts of new experience, but my happiness is a priority too. So some challenges I've encountered throughout my career is just like being in environments that aren't so helpful or aren't so supportive. And so I think that's the greatest challenge. I think it's important to be at a place where you're actually happy and you're supported and people encourage and inspire you to grow.
And can you share about a challenge in your career path?
Who did you ask?
I was asking Nina to elaborate on a challenge in her career path, sorry.
No worries.
Like towards your college education or
Sure. So I was the first person in my family to go to college. So I took a gap year between college and grad school because I knew I wanted to go to grad school. I just didn't know what that process looked like. So after college, I went back to community college for 1 year and just had fun taking a bunch of classes because I wanted to stay in the zone. And then I learned how to go to grad school, how to apply what I had to do. And I was really happy with the experience. So it was great.
Thank you. Paulina, would you like to share a challenge in your career path or in your current profession?
So I think I would divide the question into, so I think the greatest challenge right now is that when we want to do mental health, we want to help people and nobody teaches us the administration part of mental health. If you dream that you're going to be a therapist, so I had to learn to manage a business. That is, of course, is not related to helping people all the time, but if you're going to open a private practice, that's part of it. And then you have to learn about insurances and the systems, and that's still struggle because it doesn't come easy. I want to be helping people, but if you want to help people, you also need to be able to support and sustain yourself. So that's, to this day, to become a business person, because you are a business person if you have a private practice. And I think the greatest challenge is when I had gone to school in California and then I went back to Colombia. And then when I came back to California, I was already an adult. I was in my mid-40s, but I had to get licensed. So I had to become an intern at age, I can't remember, 45 or so, and sort of start new and we have to do 3,200 hours of supervision and learn how to practice in a different country and write my exam and pass my exam. I had gone to university many years before, so I didn't have all that knowledge available to me. So that was the greatest challenge. When I passed my 2 state exams, I cried. That was wasn't as easy as stepping right out of school.
Thank you for sharing. And you touched a little bit about administrative challenges, and I know, Jim, you're a mental health administrator, so maybe you'll be able to elaborate on that or any additional challenges that you have faced in your profession.
Well, we don't have that long. I think when you work within a system, there's initiatives that you may not fully agree with, or maybe are not completely prepared for, or your supervisors are not, or your direct care staff are not. even with this most recent, COVID experience, we have about 65% of our people working from home. And most were not prepared for that. Our consumers were not prepared for that. And so, and there's been initiatives like this, or one point I was a nurse and a therapist at an outpatient clinic, and we needed to move and start doing detention behavioral health services. I'm a rare breed of being a nurse and a therapist at the same time. And so I was assigned and I worked in jails. I like to joke that they let me out every day for good behavior. So for about 5 years in my career, I became a detention therapist nurse, and I had not anticipated that at all. And I learned a lot. And so those are the type of things that, you're not anticipating and are thrown at you, and kind of you figure out how to do it. And so there's been a lot of those, but those are two big ones.
Thank you for sharing. I know sometimes in the mental health work, there are gaps in terms of outreach or people that are accessing these services. So can you share a little bit about what has working in this field taught you about the gaps that exist within our communities in terms of mental health work? We can go ahead and start with Nina.
I work with physicians, and I wish they were more aware of the local resources, because many times there is a disconnect. So I wish there were more links and more organizations work together.
Thank you. Paulina, would you like to add to that?
I think that one of the greatest gaps in the Valley is to have culturally aware people. They're very often, like in one of my providers, one of the large providers in the Valley for insurance, I am the only Spanish-speaking therapist. And so I struggle because I don't find that there's very many Spanish-speaking therapists that can serve the Hispanic community. So there is a really big gap there, and we need more Hispanic people to go into mental health at all levels, so that we can serve our community.
Jim, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I think the resources that people have, especially consumers we serve, they're usually low income, or maybe have Medi-Cal, maybe not, or unfunded. And so some of our consumers, even when we went to, phone services or telehealth, some of our consumers had limited minutes. So we weren't able to provide, phones for them. And they did need their service, so they had to prioritize. Maybe they wanted to talk to a psychiatrist for their meds, but didn't have the minutes to talk to a therapist, or a peer staff, or so they had to limit. And we knew that sometimes they didn't have resources for rent and food and the lights on, and then they had to figure out about if they could take their medicine or be able to afford their medicine. And so just the resources fiscally to be able to manage. And even frankly, even my own staff, who were told, Tuesday, you're now working from home and we're going to get your computer set up. And some of them weren't prepared for that at all. And so even in our own staff and the resources. So there's challenges for the diverse populations we serve, even within the desert region. It's a very vast world, even in the different pockets of people who come for services in our region. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
We'll move on to the next question. A lot of our attendees are students that are interested in mental health careers. So can you provide some tips or advice for these students that want to pursue a career in mental health?
I'll go ahead and jump in. I would say volunteer and get experience and network. I think those were, the best things I could have done while I prepared for this career.
Thank you. Paulina?
I think that talking to as many people that call themselves a mental health professional, both now if they're in high school and through your bachelor's degree, and talk to professors, try to participate, because it's a very broad field, and there are many opportunities that you would not even imagine that they're out there. So ask, interview. For people, don't be afraid. I had people contact me and say, I just want to ask you some questions. I am a senior. And I am always very glad to talk to young people and explain the little bit that I know. So ask, be inquisitive. There's a lot out there that you can do with a mental health background.
Thank you. Jim?
Yeah, I would say a couple of things. This hits home because I have young people in my family looking for work in the behavioral health field. And don't anticipate your first job being your last job. Be open to taking something that may not be in your sweet zone, because other opportunities happen from that. Learn about the place you're interviewing for. The county, for instance, has a huge array of services: prevention and early intervention, outpatient services, inpatient services, detention health, and know what their initiatives are. I have supervisors who are interviewing folks recently, and they didn't even know what the major focuses are for the county. And they are integrated care. They are peer-led services, lived experiences. So do a little homework so you're prepared, and that will impress the people who are interviewing you. They're my age mostly, or a little younger. And so understand their worldview as well, because sometimes that's a different mindset. And so if you know anybody in that agency, interview them, be prepared for their worldview. So that's important.
Can I add something too? Sorry. Real quick, you will need letters of recommendation for grad school. So meet people now. Like, as when you go in for college, meet your professors, get to talk to them, because you will need letters of recommendation. So that's another advice thing I would give.
Yes, I agree. And I know, you touched a little bit on this earlier, that one of the biggest challenges is finding happiness in working in this profession. And so what are some ways you each practice self-care? What does that look like, especially now during the current pandemic that we're facing as a mental health professional? You can get started,
Okay.
Nina.
Yes, I am working way too much and way too hard, but I'm actually paying off some debt, which is going to be a really great thing. So yeah, so I'm excited about that, and it's definitely worth all the struggle right now. I wish there was more self-care in there, but that'll come very, very soon. So it's about understanding that there's a timeline, there are goals, I'm working something, and it's going to be short term. So that's what keeps me going too.
In my case, I think I write. I wake up in the morning, I have a coffee, and I write. I am a big believer in journaling, and it just works for me. So that's been really, really helpful for a lifetime, and certainly through COVID. It's interesting because the same thing that is work ends up being a lifeline. So being able to be there for my clients, mostly at the beginning, made sense. Like, I had no time to suffer. I needed to be there. I needed to be present. I needed to figure it out for the people around me. And that was really important. And when the weather permitted, and now they're permitting now, I really miss being able to move. So getting out there and taking a walk. It was the spring back in March. So that was really soothing. It's been hard now as the heat kids. And so I'm struggling a little bit with that, with how to get movement and how to get out. But I write and I call my friends.
Yes, I've heard a lot about the benefits of journaling, so that's an awesome recommendation. What about you, Jim?
Well, I think in answer to this question, I recall, when I was a therapist and a nurse, a direct care staff, I had to get away from, this is tough work. And so I had the benefits really of my kids. I would coach and I would lead them in some of their activities. And that was really a way for me to just separate. I would, and I have, my own spiritual life, my own exercise life, my own wellness tools that I personally just have to get away from this because it can be overwhelming. And it's one of the things I see as my supervisors deal with their direct care staff and trying to teach them, the compassion fatigue issue, because this is hard work, carrying, at least for a while, holding somebody's issues until they can hold on to themselves, kind of, that's been described. You've got to be able to, I think, just get away from this work in some way. So I probably should have been paying my children's money, so they allowed me to coach them back then, but I didn't. Please don't share this on video somewhere. If they see it, they'll be asking for checks. But anyways, that I just have to get away from it. It's just too much sometimes.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you all for sharing. And before we open it up to the questions from our attendees, our last question is, what do you love the most about your job?
I love helping people get closer to their goals, whatever that is, and watching that excitement and watching them be really proud of themselves and really get to understand who they are and own themselves. That's a beautiful gift. Yeah, it's a privilege to do this kind of work.
Awesome. Paulina?
Yes, I think that my greatest gift is when I see. I think the sentence that I most like in my job is when somebody says, "Well, I had never thought about it that way," and so you know that something has changed, that you open a door, that you open up a possibility, and then sometimes I even have the gift of watching them then now walk through that door and have their lives come back. Emotional work is slow and it takes, so I say, I really was able to do this, or I've been able, and their lives have improved, and so that makes it all worth it.
Awesome. And Jim?
Yeah, at this stage in my career, I do remember some special moments when clients would call me back and, thank me or tell me, a couple comes in that I worked with and that they were expecting their first child. And when they first came into me, they weren't expecting to be a couple anymore. So it is great. Like Nina shared, to see people, find something that maybe they had lost or find something that they didn't know they had. At this stage in my career, though, it's really helping my supervisors train the younger people and trying to leave a legacy. I probably have 5 to 7 more years in this business, Lord willing. I don't think I can do 10, but maybe, who knows? But at this stage, it's kind of, and I think that's a developmental process for me too, about what I can do now and what I can do later. And so to see the younger people really learn how to care for people and help people find their meaning or their purpose or the best in them is now what I really look forward to.
Sounds like it's a very rewarding job. And so now I'll open it up for the questions from our Q&A, and we do have two questions already. The first one is, are there any specific internships or volunteer opportunities that you may know of open for graduating high school seniors looking to get some experience?
Aren't there some pipeline programs out here in the desert?
Kim, would you like to?
Yeah,
Yes.
so there are, for the internships and volunteers for high school students, we're actually starting a school to behavioral health career pipeline program. And so it's open this year to graduating seniors who are interested in pursuing behavioral health. And if you're interested in doing that, we'd love to have you join our cohort. And this behavioral health alignment team, so the folks on this call and their colleagues will be mentoring the group as they pursue through. And our One Future scholarship and student support team will be helping with that process as well. So that's one option. And the other is, as you go on and become primarily a junior or a senior undergrad, but sometimes sophomore undergrads are eligible. There's a program called Health Career Connection, and it's a paid summer internship. You do a 10-week, 40-hour-a-week internship in a behavioral health setting. And each year we strive to get at least 6 positions in the Coachella Valley that have a specific behavioral health focus. So if you're interested in doing that, we can post about when that the application generally opens up in December. But if you connect with Eloisa, Ariana, or myself afterwards, we can share with you more about that opportunity. But I think those are probably 2. And then I can't emphasize enough that Nina's suggestion to volunteer and also to get to know people now who'd be willing to support you and write letters of recommendation as you move forward, because there are lots of opportunities and sometimes you just create some for yourselves.
Yes.
Yeah. And when I got to college too, I was part of a lot of clubs. So I did some of that too. So that was helpful to build those relationships and test those interpersonal skills.
Yes, and as an HCC alumni, I highly recommend the program and all of you to consider applying for any. It includes behavioral health, so and we do have a lot of options for those internships here in the Valley. So please consider applying for next year. I'll go ahead and ask the next question. Someone is interested in learning more about your role, Nina, as a behavioral scientist. Can you describe more about what that means?
Sure. I had no idea going in to become a licensed marriage and family therapist, but every single family medicine residency program is required to have somebody who's dedicated to behavioral health. So, so family medicine residents and physicians have high rates of suicide, burnout, and depression. So we want to make sure we take care of them, plus teach them about behavioral health, so they can take care of their patients. So some wellness, some patient care, and some behavioral health stuff in there, and a couple of other things, and just admin stuff too. But it's a very fun and challenging job too.
Okay, thank you. I'll go ahead and ask the next question. Do you know of any more undergraduate student interns or volunteer opportunities in the Valley? I think we touched a little bit on that.
Yeah, I'll also mention that I kind of landed with One Future because I did an HCC internship with them. So that's what I did for my internship, because I am interested in the behavioral health field. So I worked with One Future and the behavioral health aid team, and kind of like I took on my own project / worked with them. So I would highly, highly recommend you guys apply to it. So definitely look into Health Career Connections once you're already in college.
And we'll be sharing additional resources and internship opportunities as we become aware of them. So please stay in contact with One Future. The next question is there a need to focus on a specified age group? And if so, is it more difficult to work with children or adults?
It's more challenging for me to personally work with kids because I don't have a lot of kids in my life. I'm an only child, so I can work with them, but I feel like I relate to adults better. So it was my decision. I have worked with kids, but it's been my decision to stick to adults. So, and then it's just a matter of like, once you sometimes find your niche, you just kind of continue doing education and learning more in that area. So that's kind of what I did. So I tend to work with adults and couples.
I think when I was doing my internship, we had the opportunity to work with all populations. There were children, there were couples, there were adults, there were seniors, and that gives you an idea, at least initially, unless you already know what it will entail, when you work with children, you really have to be, some people do all populations, but if you specialize, like even in an office as a private practice, if you're going to work with children, you want to have toys, you want to have an office that has little chairs that have, that is a different color. And so you have a child, and then if you also work with adults, then you have an adult that works. So eventually you end up specializing because it makes you more efficient in that field. And we all do find some population that we are more akin. I have colleagues that are wonderful with children, and so I refer my children over there. I would be good, but they will be excellent. People who can connect with teenagers, people who do very well with senior citizens or elderly. So each population does require a little bit more knowledge on the challenges of that population.
I think each age group has its own challenge.
Oh, go ahead.
In my career, I've worked in, children's settings. I've worked with youth who were in lieu of placement at a juvenile hall. And frankly, that was a really difficult population for me. I didn't do it long. I did really enjoy some aspects of that, though. I really enjoyed the individual work and the family therapy with them. It was harder for me to do a group of that type of population. I just didn't feel that was my sweet spot. But I think for me, sometimes I get a little bored and rambunctious or whatever, and I need something new. If you plot my career, it's kind of went zigzag a little bit. But I think each population challenges me in some ways, calls me to new tasks on how to deal with families and children. But I do think there's some things natural for us. And I think that also changes as we move along in our career, in our different experiences. So
Thank you.
the cool part is, I think mental health allows you to do that. And that's a really, I think nursing and mental health both allow that. And I honestly feel so privileged to be in this field and to have both of those degrees and experiences because I could find, I'm not a critical care nurse. That made me anxious as heck. But I think there is a lot of movement allowed and growth. So.
Okay, thank you all for sharing. I'll ask the next question, which is actually something I've also wondered myself. It is, do clinical therapists have their own therapists?
I tried finding my own therapist. I just haven't found the right match. So I'm always looking for someone. I wasn't open to telehealth, but now that everyone's doing it, it'll probably be easier for me to find a therapist. It's a small town, so I kind of want to go outside to find a therapist.
Yeah, thank you. Paulina?
Yes, I think at least I have somebody I work with, and I find it very supportive and useful. To think that because you're a therapist, you don't have any emotional issues to work through, it's really a fantasy. We have as many issues as anybody else. I actually would think that we should all be doing it because it's a hard profession, but we go through exactly the same things and we need exactly the same supports. To think that does a doctor have its own doctor? Yeah. So I do. And I was doing telehealth even before everybody did because this person lives quite far, but it was somebody that I finally had a good match with.
And just to make sure we get through them all, I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the next one. And it can be a follow-up to this one. Since many of you are doing now telecare, how does that compare to in person? And are there do you feel the online communication is still as effective as it is in person? Jim, can you answer that one for us?
Yeah, I think I have lots of different people under me, so I'm not doing direct care at this point in time. Most therapists need their own therapist at least sometimes in their life. I'll just add to that. At different stages in my career, I've had that, and I think I learned more from my own experience than I did from any classroom or any being a therapist myself. But anyways, some people have been really good at it, really natural, and actually, frankly, better than they were. They're better than their work site because they were less distracted by all the other stuff that happens in a big, busy clinic. Some people have really struggled with it and haven't been really able to attach and I don't know if that's skills driven, personality driven, experience driven. That would be an interesting graduate school study. Some of you people on who are exploring this with us. It really is interesting to me, and I don't have the answers to all that. But we've had a wide range of responses. Some people we've had to pull back into the clinics just because they really can't do it, and frankly they're not comfortable with it, and they're not being really productive for themselves and their consumers. Some we think maybe this will be part of their career as they're going forward because they're really good at it and their numbers are great and people really like it and called us and said this is really good. So it's a wide bell-shaped curve about the responses, at least for us in the county. I don't know about you all.
Maybe Nina, can you add to that?
Sure. I miss out on the body language. So I can't always see what they're doing, if they're like twitching their feet or something like that. So I miss that. Also, when I'm working with a couple, I like to see, I have a kind of a big wide couch. So I like to see where on the couch they sit next to each other. So if there's a lot of distance between them, that's something for me to consider. But when they're both trying to look at the camera, they're usually sitting next to each other. So I don't get to see that dynamic. So there are some things that I miss out on, but overall it's better than not having this available. So I'll take what I can get.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and move on to the next question. We're still getting questions from our attendees, and this one is from a student. In order to work as a therapist in the social work area, do you need a doctorate degree, or can you begin to start therapy with only a master's?
The career path, if you do social work, is you have to get a master's in social work, and then you have to do 3,200 hours, or at least that, of supervised practice, and then you do a state exam and become a licensed clinical social worker, and then you can have your practice. You don't have to have a PhD, but you have to have a master's and a supervised internship and state exam.
Thank you, Paulina. Another question, are there any skills, soft or hard, that you consider valuable in having for your specific career?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
So any valuable skills for your career, soft or hard skills that are needed?
Ability to listen. I think that's extremely important. Not everybody can do that.
Thank you.
And be empathetic.
Well, I think I'm going to be an administrator for a second. You got to be able to chart. You got to be able to electronically document accurately and completely. And that's the tough part, I think, and sometimes concurrently, because caseloads are so big and so full, and to keep up, you got to be able to have two sides of your brain working at the same time. It's not the best therapeutically, but it's certainly practically to be able to manage that and manage a caseload. But being an older person, when I was working as a nurse, I had some people that were terrific on the computer, but really struggled to really relate and to be human with folks. And that's an important piece too, because people don't trust you. One, they're not going to be real. Two, they're not going to come back. And that's not good for either of you. And so it's a tougher balance than when I started. Um, um, I think.
Thank you. And I'll start with the next question, and Paulina, maybe you can answer this one since you do have your private practice. It is, how is it different having your own private practice versus working in any other work environment? And what are some of the barriers you all have faced in having your own private practice in the Coachella Valley, aside from a language barrier?
So it's different. For example, for a little bit, I did counseling, but it was a group, and the group managed billing, appointments. All I had to do was come in, see my clients, do my notes, and then they would do all the dealing with the insurance. So that was, in a way, it was nicer, but then it was in their terms. It was their scheduling. It was I had to run on their time, but I did not have to occupy myself with that part. So that's something. The other thing that happens when you practice with a group is that you have colleagues readily available, because there's 3 or 4 of you, and you can consult and you can talk, and you're not quite as isolated. When you are flying solo, you have to do the management and learn to do it all. And you also, unless you have an office that you share with somebody else, you tend to be more alone, and you'll find that private practice practitioners will tell you that they miss having a group, for example, group supervision or a colleague to consult. So I will always suggest that if you're going to have a private practice, you think of practicing along with somebody else, so that you're not alone. It's hard, you want to consult. So I would say that.
Thank you. Moving on, what influenced you to pursue a career in mental health? Jim, do you want to start?
Well, that's a long story. I'll just share. My parents were really young when they got married, and I was their third child, and my mom was 18 when she had me. My dad was 20, and so they had their own struggles. And I had, some coaches and teachers who cared about me. Basically, my first counselor, and so I wanted to honestly give back, and so that's why I became a medic and a psych tech, and was pretty good at that, especially with these young people who had their first psychotic break in the military right after Vietnam, a few years after. And so it was just kind of a natural thing. And I did like nursing, and I thought, well, I'm going to go to nursing school, and then we'll see what happens. And then, marriage and family therapy came. So, but for me, it was, people gave to me spiritually and emotionally and mentally. And I think I just had to give back. So that's just my story. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
Nina?
To keep it really simple, I think I realized very early on that I loved listening to people, and I felt very honored that people told me their stories. I realized I can do that and get paid for it.
Thank you. How about you, Paulina?
It's interesting. As a teenager, I always said I wanted to be una psicóloga. I don't really even know why. And then I veered away from being a psicóloga for a while, as I said. And that confirmed to me that no, I wanted the type of relationship that you established as a mental health counselor, because that's very different from other levels. It's very honest, it's very sincere, it's very committed. And I am that type of person. So that was where I would be able to be the most efficient, and I really like it. Yeah.
Thank you. We'll do one more question before we transition to Ariana, who will be sharing some resources. And the question is, we have seen our youth students doing really well with our latest situation with COVID, whereas the parents are the ones that need some guidance and counseling. Do you feel this is a technology evolution? What are your experiences with this and seeing the strengths and weaknesses of our youth during this time?
Who's that question for?
Jim, go ahead and answer it.
Okay. we've had challenges with every age group. Parents are struggling. I have young therapists who have their own kids at home and trying to navigate that, and older adults struggling and not being really able to access as well. And us concerned about them and their vulnerability. But that's a complicated question that I don't think our world was ready for any of this. Frankly, my department wasn't. It hasn't, the kids at home are just one aspect, but even try to be able to have your unique place to provide care, not everybody has that or the tools to do that. And so, yes, all of it has been, a struggle. I'm frankly so impressed that my staff are still functioning through all this process. And frankly, that I'm still functioning. That this has not been an easy thing for a huge system and huge county system. And I'm sure for the individual providers, it's probably even been worse. We have at least some IT support, right? But yeah, I mean, I could talk forever and I won't. That's enough.
Nina, Paulina, can you maybe add to if you see a difference between parents or children, how they're responding to COVID, and if children are responding better because of technology?
It would be hard. I don't know. I think that they are more used to the screens, and so I think it becomes easier. My older population, it's been, and I did this today and yesterday a lot. I had to walk people through and so it's two things. It's older people, they're not used to it, they don't do it, so I walk it. And then when I appear, the other side is like, there you are. And they gain a new skill, and that makes them feel empowered and accessible. So I think there's been a gain, but yes, and I do worry with the Hispanic population, where they were used to having the grandchildren and the children help them. Now that they are sheltering in place, they don't have the grandchild that says, oh yes, grandma, just click here. And that cuts them off. So I think that children suffer for different reasons than the access to technology, because technology is easier. And I think that older people suffer because they don't have the technology help. And yes, ourselves, I did the first sessions one day like this because the technology wouldn't allow me to put the person straight, and yeah, there was no support.
Thank you. So before I transition to Ariana, I just want to thank the panelists for joining us today and answering all of our questions. I know our attendees really appreciate you all, and we will be sharing some of the responses and the recording with you all if you want to go back to some of these responses. So thank you once again for joining us. Ariana, can you go ahead and share some resources, and then she will also be talking about our next webinar.
Yes, so I'll be talking about some behavioral health resources that you guys can use. So the first one is the California Workforce Initiative. They have a PDF file in which it lines up all these health resources and kind of like a ladder on how to get to certain careers. And they have a section for behavior and mental health pathways. So as you can see in this graphic, they have what you can do with a high school graduate degree all the way up until a 6-year degree. So it gives you a lot of options, and it has step-by-step instructions on how to get to those different careers. And the second one is also a great resource I found. So it's kind of like a questionnaire, like a personality test, but for careers in mental health. And it was created by a professor in the University of Kentucky. And it was a great resource for me because it kind of gives you an idea of not only what pathway you want to work in, but in what setting. So I think that's really important. So you guys can kind of test to see what is best for you. And we will include the links to these 2 resources below. All right, so join us next Friday. We will have a new webinar for careers and community college pathways, where we'll learn about different careers that the community colleges have to offer. And we'll have new speakers also, and it'll be at 3 o'clock. So please follow us on social media if you haven't already at OneFutureCV. And if you've already followed us, you can enter to a prize drawing by reposting one of our posts. All right, so a big thank you to the team. And then here's the information if you guys want to contact the other presenters.
And I just want to join. I want to also echo that gratitude. I want to thank our panelists for joining us today. And Ariana and Eloisa, you did a great job sort of walking us through all the different chats and pieces of this. And to everyone who joined us attending today. It's really, we've been delighted to have you and hope you'll join us the following 2 Fridays in May for the upcoming webinars that Ariana shared about. Eloisa, anything else?
That's it. Thank you everyone for joining us. Again, we'll be following up with all of you who attended and those who registered and weren't able to make it. We'll be sharing the recording, the questions that were asked today and the responses. Please join us next week for our webinar, and the following one is on next Friday as well. Thank you all.